Hello, everybody. Group dynamics affect so many aspects of our life, including how we dress, what we watch, and even what we perceive as right or wrong. You may not notice this, but it's true. There are two different aspects of group dynamics: conformity and social comparison. Both conformity and social comparison affect your everyday life, whether you notice it or not. Everybody wants to be included in a group, one way or another. Now, the size of that group and what it stands for is up to you. Wanting to be included is part of human nature, though. No one really wants to be completely alone. And it's very easy to conform to a social norm or to compare yourself to social standards. So, I'm going to explain why that is. Uh, Conformity is a lot more common in society than you might think. I can guarantee you that everyone listening to this has conformed to at least one thing in their life. For example, does this look like breakfast to you? And why so? Eggs are considered breakfast food because society has deemed it to be that way. So if you think eggs are breakfast food, you have conformed to societal beliefs in one way or another. Now, there's nothing wrong with conforming to society's strict breakfast standards, as well as most things that we conform to. The way we dress is also an example of conformity. People tend to dress depending on trends. Even if you don't dress trendy, odds are you're conforming to a way of style that you've seen other groups do. Like goth people wear all black, or anything sort of that nature. So, how big of a group is needed before people start to conform? A study by Niska and Burka concluded that unanimous majority in a group is the most powerful in yielding conformity, but the size of the group can differ. And unanimous majority is quite impractical. It's hard to get a group that all agrees on one thing. Their study showed that a person is very likely to conform if they feel like they're the only one left out, which is pretty reasonable. I don't like being the only one left out when I'm part of a group. But what if you aren't the only one left out? You just think you are because no one wants to speak up. That is another way that conformity happens. Everybody tends to agree because they're scared of being left out. So, now let's talk about social comparison, the other side of group dynamics. Social comparison takes the same ideas from conformity and inserts them in the way you live your life and perceive yourself more so. In the textbook Persuasion, Integrating Theory, Research, and Practice by Freimer and Nadler, they define social comparison as how we evaluate our own accomplishments by comparing them to others. An example of social comparison would be comparing your score on a test to the class average, which I have done a bunch of times, especially when I get a kind of low score. I want to see if everybody else did really good and I'm the only one that did bad, or if I'm around standard. Um, social Now that social comparison can either make you feel a lot better about yourself or a lot worse in that situation. But social comparison can be very unhealthy when people start comparing themselves to celebrities, like for body standards, or even just social media influencers and how they live their life. It's tough to compare yourself to that because they're impractical standards, and people tend to do that quite a bit. So it's better not to compare yourself to ridiculous standards so much, but the occasional peek at your class's test scores or the average grade in your class, that's okay. That shouldn't be too much of a problem. Now, let's wrap things up a little bit here. The group dynamic is a huge part of everyday life, as I've stated before. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some things are good to conform to. This is a pretty extreme example, but conforming to the idea that racism is bad, which surprisingly is an idea that society has taken a little too long to conform to, would be a good thing to conform to. It's a pretty good idea to agree with that idea. But try not to compare yourself to others too much, though. It's really good to be an individual, especially in a time where originality is rare. So in the end, is key. Balance is the most important thing. Just like a healthy breakfast with lots of eggs and maybe a side of bacon and toast. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good one.